Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Mystics on a Mission show. I am very excited because today I'm here with Bryan Teare. Hi.
Hey, Hannah, and all the other mystics on a mission. I'm really excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
So excited to have you. So I met Bryan when I was a guest on his podcast, which was really fun. His podcast is called The Quarter Life Comeback. It's a really cool conversation. I felt like at the end of it, he had gotten to know me, but I haven't gotten to know him at all. And so I'm really excited to have him on the show today to talk about his work, about his journey here, and he has some really cool things that he's doing that I just want to ask a couple more questions about. So for everybody who doesn't know you, Bryan, can you tell us a little bit about what you're currently doing?
Yeah, so I think like a lot of other millennials, I started my career down the corporate path, and I grew up like in a really happy family. I'm super grateful for everything that me and my three brothers were given. And I just went through the steps that we're told you're supposed to follow. And I did well. Like I excelled academically and at sports. I studied a good degree. I didn't really know what I wanted to do when I finished school, but I followed the path of one of my older brothers who, like him and I, are very similar. And so I did engineering, civil engineering. I did that I studied it for 4 years and again did really well. And then I did that as a job for 2.5 years. And I got to a point where like I realized I'd never really taken a step back and asked myself, like, is this actually how I want to be spending my days? And through like a couple of different events and a little bit of travel and things, I started taking a look at that stuff and asking myself those questions. And there were two videos that I watched which really kind of pushed me over the edge, and that was Steve Jobs' commencement speech and a TED talk by Scott Dinsmore about like finding and doing the work that you love. And I realized that like there were so many people making an impact and making an income, and it didn't have to be either or. And so I started exploring that more and ended up quitting my job with no real plan B, which I don't actually suggest people do if they can help it. But yeah, from that point, it's been a continual journey and exploring things that interest me. I came back from a 2-month backpacking trip through Southeast Asia and became a personal trainer. And that led to, I kind of realized that there's so much more to health than just physical exercise. And so I went more into health coaching stuff. And then like, as I kind of explored and experimented, I became interested in different things. So the health coaching I enjoyed, but I was more interested in like helping people create a life that they really like wanted to live and that they really loved. And so health to me is just a small part of that, but I wanted to make a slightly different impact and a bigger impact. And so I started kind of looking into life coaching, which I don't really love that term. I think it's got a very negative connotation. I think life coaching is pretty misunderstood, but that is probably how you would describe it now. And along the way as well, like I've experimented with other things to try and make money here or there. And through those sort of experiments and explorations, I've developed other skills like starting my podcast and then helping other people to do the same thing. And so now I kind of focus on my work, which is the coaching and the podcast. And then I know we're going to be super open and honest and vulnerable here. So that's not the only way that I kind of put food on the table. I also do some other work for someone who was a role model of mine, and he's a coach himself, someone who I admired for a long time. And after we had an interview on my show, he reached out to me, and I'm now working on basically as a member of his team and creating content and kind of strategy and that kind of thing. So those are the two areas at the moment.
That's awesome. So I would love to hear a little bit about how somebody could find what they're meant to do. So you mentioned that you went traveling. I also know that there was a turning point at your 25th birthday when you just had that awakening moment of something needs to change. Like, what did you do? What did you explore? How can
Mhm.
somebody even get started on that journey?
Yeah, and it's a topic that I've been really sort of passionate about lately is the whole like how do I find my purpose? And I gave a talk to my high school a couple of weeks ago, and I mentioned, I spoke about the ten sort of components that I believe make up sort of a champion life. It was a sports award side in the champion thing there. But that was things that were based on lessons I've learned from my podcast guests. And one of them was passion or purpose. Like champions connect to a higher passion or purpose in their life and do things more than just for themselves. And it's the most common question I hear. And I think the biggest talking points among especially millennials nowadays is like, how do I find my passion or my purpose? And I interviewed a guy called Tom Asacker on my podcast. I think it was episode 54. And he said that too many people are trying to figure out their purpose. And the problem with that is your passion or your purpose isn't like out there, it's in here. So you can try and like brainstorm and like figure it out in your head, but actually the answers are going to be in your heart and in your body. And the way that you find those is kind of like I said earlier, is experimenting with things that interest you and things that you've thought like, oh, I wonder what that would be like. And I think I actually wrote an article about this for my site, which is going to be live. I don't know when this episode is going out, but at the time of recording, it's going to be live tomorrow. And I think when you can combine the intersection between like the things you're really good at, so your strengths and your gifts, the things that you enjoy doing, so those would be kind of like the things you're passionate about, like the things that really excite you, the things that you enjoy doing as a child, and then the things that people need. When you can kind of combine these three things, I think that's where you find kind of a sweet spot or a sort of a zone of genius, if you want to call that. But I think that's kind of an area to focus on. And if you can, I said the idea is not to brainstorm the things, but if you can like journal or however that looks for you and figure out like, well, these things I'm really good at, these things I really enjoy doing, and then these are areas where people need help or things that people would be willing to pay for or people need, I think you're going to find a really good intersection over there.
I especially love the word intersection of so many things, because that's a question that I get a lot where people come to coaching with me. And I had this one girl come to me and she had been listing business ideas for I think 11 years when she came to me. So she had this journal that was full of business ideas, really good, viable ideas. And she said that over the years, she saw that all of these ideas were being realized and that they're real now. And at the time of writing them down, she always thought, oh, that's not ripe yet. Like, I don't know if I can really do this. I don't know if this is a viable business idea. And I especially love when you talk about intersection, because when we have to find correlations in different areas of our lives, or for example, have to ask our intuition as well as our mind, as well as our feelings, as well as the people who we would be serving, we are taking so many more aspects into account and we get so much more information than just by sitting down, writing it down, and trying to figure it out by ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And something that I also heard, which I thought was so genius, was somebody said to me, an idea that comes to you chooses you for a reason. It's like a soul choosing parents. It's like it is there because it wants you to nurture it and to help it grow. So if it comes to you, if it hits you, it makes you think, oh, that somehow that does something to me, then why not move forward? Why not explore it? And so my client now has a business, so she's been able to work through all of her business ideas, actually do it, and it really did came from experimentation and actually take action on it and do market research and, expand the whole idea beyond the mind so that she was able to move from this list of business ideas into an actual real life thing that had a life of its own, a realized idea. So I feel like that happens to so many of us, where we stay in our minds and we don't go into those other places that you've just described, like, what did I like to do in my childhood? What do people actually want? What is my passion, but what am I also good at? So that's really interesting.
Yeah, another so you mentioned like having a whole list of ideas. That's something I'm almost religious about, is like, if I get an idea, I've got like a Trello board of things that come to me, and like every 3 months I'll go look at it again and kind of scratch ones off that I feel, no, actually, like, there's nothing there. And then others I save for later on. And something that a friend of mine, Ryan Robinson, has spoken about as well is like, everyone seems kind of like on this mission to do what they love, or to live their purpose. But what he said was like, if you can get really good at a skill, you can use that skill to kind of create a lifestyle that you do love. So maybe it's not like, maybe you don't start off like, these are the things I love, I have to make a living from these things. I'm also very strongly of the belief that like, some things can stay a hobby. They don't have to be a money generating thing. But what he said is like, you develop a skill over time. So let's say I became really good at podcast production, and then you use that skill to create the lifestyle that you kind of want to live. And for me, and I'm just using an example, like that would be me becoming a podcast producer, or like content producer for other people's podcasts, and using that to kind of create a life that I really like or really love. So that was another approach. But I think it all again comes back to what I said, the 2 E's is exploring and experimenting. And the great part about that is you don't have to quit your job to kind of live out your passion. You can explore and experiment with things while you're still employed, like use your time after work or before work to start that blog, or to start an interview series or a podcast or a YouTube channel. And if it gets traction, then cool, there might be something there. And if not, like, that's fine too. But you've given yourself the opportunity, and like you've tested whether it's something you could see yourself doing long term, and if people actually like it and want you to carry on.
I think that's so cool. I remember when I finished college and I started my business, and I was also in the experimenting and exploring phase, I was getting a little insecure because I saw myself changing direction all the time, and it seemed like everybody else was like, like floating along. They were taking steps, like one step after the other. And for me, it felt like, okay, I tried this. Okay, it didn't work. I tried the other thing. Nah. I tried the next thing. I was like, oh, that's interesting. But then it like took me somewhere entirely different. And now I see how that was actually like pretty forward. Like it was forward movement. It didn't feel like that at all. I kept thinking, oh my God, I'm so lost. I make all these mistakes. How come everybody else seems to know what they're doing? Am I the only one who doesn't know what she's doing? And now looking back, I'm just at awe at myself, because it takes a lot to take that time out to just explore, and to not need it to work out the way you want to, and to really have that curiosity of, I'm going to find out and I'm just going to try it, and I don't know what's going to come of it. And you gain so much information, and it's actually a pretty effective way of moving ahead, because you learn so much from these whether you want to call them mistakes or whatever. I don't call them mistakes, but you could call them that. So let's call them mistakes just for shits and giggles today. So if you make all those mistakes that seemingly, just take you around and around in circles, you are learning so effectively. Like it's been really effective. Now I look back and I think, whoa, I was growing at lightning speed, because I tried 7 or 8 different things per week. And that was really cool. And it really also whipped me into shape. I felt very entitled back then. I thought, oh, I'm going to be so successful. This is going to be so easy for me because I'm so intelligent. And I was, the cocky millennial that everybody's talking about. And I've learned a lot of humility through making those mistakes that actually led me to awesome insights and a lot of good skills and good inner strength.
Yeah, and I actually mentioned this in that same talk, and I don't know, maybe we can link up to that talk in the show notes. I recorded it as a solo podcast episode. But another thing I said in the talk was like, if you have your head in the clouds and all you're focused on is like your big goal, that vision that you think you want, but actually like you might not want it down the line. But if that's all you're focused on, you're going to miss the opportunities that are right next to you already. And an example of this is like the work that I'm doing now. I'm not my own brand, but for the other brand, sort of the business strategy and like kind of consulting and content strategy and stuff. None of that would have happened if I didn't like experiment with starting a podcast. And when I quit my job 3 years ago, like I hardly even knew what a podcast was. But that came along and I was like, maybe I'll try that. And then like I had a really good interview with this guy and that's led to another opportunity now. So it's like if all you're focused on is what you think you want, you're going to miss out on opportunities that are there already. And another guy that I interviewed, Smiley Pozwalski, he wrote a book called The Quarter Life Breakthrough. And what he said is, he's also like a millennial expert and that kind of thing. But what he said is that the old model of the career ladder, where it's kind of like, you start from the bottom and you journey upwards on this single line, that's completely out the window. And it's now more like career lily pads where we jump to this thing and then like an opportunity pops up here. But we're still growing, like moving forward, but it's not a linear thing. It's like we develop a skill over here and then we meet someone over here, and it's all kind of stepping stones to forward growth.
Oh, I can so relate to that. That's a really cool picture to have. Yeah. Okay, so something that I think is really, really cool about you is that you have the life list, which is a list of things that you want to experience in your life, and sometimes you are crossing things off that you don't feel are for you anymore. And then sometimes I can also see, because I keep revisiting it to see like what you're doing, because I think it's so cool. And then sometimes, like you've done things and it's really inspiring and cool. So what made you want to start a life list?
So everyone's heard of like the bucket list. And around about the time where I quit my job was the first time I'd really started reading blogs and things online. And there was a guy's blog, his name is Joel Runyon, and his blog is impossiblehq.com, I think. And he had something called the impossible list. And I just like the twist on like, a bucket list is things you want to do one day, but his twist on it was like, it's things that seem impossible, things that you would love to do, but you have no idea how. And like the normal bucket list things will still be in there, like going to Machu Picchu or climbing Mount Kilimanjaro and that kind of thing. But then there's other things that are kind of stretch goals. So I did that as a way to have my list somewhere where I could refer to it easily, and then also like inspire other people, and kind of publicly hold myself accountable to my goals. And I'm really excited about, I think the next one that I want to work towards is I want to set the Guinness World Record for giving the most hugs in 1 hour. And I have to hug about 2,500 people in 1 hour, which is quite a feat. But I think that would be such a cool record to hold. It's like, I hold the record for hugging the most people in 1 hour. So that's one I'm pretty excited about now. And then others is like climbing Mount Kilimanjaro and visiting Everest Base Camp and Machu Picchu, that kind of thing.
That's amazing. So what have you done out of all the items on your life list that you're most proud of?
Man, I need to think of what was on there. Quitting my job and like becoming self-employed is a big one. I can't even remember if that's on there, but I think it is, but that was a big one. Having someone told me that I changed their life was massive for me. Um, Giving my first motivational speech, that was a big one, because speaking traditionally for me has been, and you might never be able to say it, but speaking traditionally for me was quite a nervous activity. But now I'm pretty confident about it. Uh, Let me think what else was on there. There's all the like fitness ones as well, and um, yeah, those are the three that come to mind first. Is like becoming self-employed, having someone tell me I changed their life, and being a motivational speaker.
That's amazing. I also think it's really cool that you live a pretty minimalist lifestyle. Can you tell us a little
Mm-hmm.
bit more about your motivation behind that?
Yeah, I it's another topic that I feel really strongly about is like kind of anti-consumerism. Um, I think probably a lot of the problems that we see today is based on like greed and consumerism, like I said, and just people wanting more and more stuff. And stuff doesn't have to be like material things, but it could be uh, psychological things as well. But just I kind of I'm not really sure where it started, because even at university, and certainly through school, like I had this t-shirt fetish, and I had a massive collection of t-shirts, probably like over 50 t-shirts. And then at some point, I really can't remember when it was, um, I just I started feeling like stressed out and almost claustrophobic around having things holding me down. And I just like a clean, clutterless, like simple environment. And then last year, again, like full disclosure and honesty here, last year I was searching around, like struggling to think how I was going to make money. And I decided, well, I thought I'd decided to go and teach English in South Korea until the last minute. Like I had the contract was signed, the documents were all ready. Um, I pretty much, it pretty much was just a case of me saying, like sending them the contract and getting on a plane, and I would have been gone. And suddenly I had this realization last minute where like, this is just going to be me taking a 9 to 5 in another country. And actually it would have been like 9 to 7. But it wouldn't have been in alignment with what I'm trying to create and the lifestyle I'm trying to create. So that was a big one. I felt like I was going to lose the momentum I've already created with my brand and my podcast and the connections I've made. And then I met my girlfriend like just as that whole thing was starting, and pretty much like literally and figuratively fell in love and was like, how can I leave this behind? But like in the process of getting ready for that trip, I started selling all my stuff, and it felt so good, knowing that I didn't have a whole lot of things where I'd be like, oh, but what about this thing? Like I can't let go of that. It pretty much wasn't the case. And even now, um, there's not really much in my house that I feel strongly attached to, other than like my MacBook, which I could take with me anywhere. But there's nothing where like if I lost it all, I'd be super upset about it. Um, and there's probably some spiritual like component to that as well, like non-attachment to material things. But it's just something I feel so strongly about. I think a lot of debt and like financial crises could be solved if people just learn to be happy with less. And I could probably carry on going, but yeah, you can't see it anymore, but there was a whiteboard behind me that said 80-20 and simplify. And it's kind of like a ruling principle that I try and evaluate as much in my life as possible against.
Mm. I can so relate to that. When I first got started on the whole self-development journey, I think I must have picked up some deeper beliefs of, oh, when I'm successful, I'm going to have a big house, or, oh, when I make that amount of money, it's going to be this number. That means that I'm successful. And then I'm going to buy clothes from that brand, and I'm going to have so many. And I had developed this picture in my mind of what success was going to look like, or what a comfortable life must look like. And I started moving towards that, making more money. My business was growing. I was, just reaching new levels of success, whatever that means. And I noticed that I didn't want to change my lifestyle. I noticed that I did not want more clothes. I noticed that I did not want 3 computers. I noticed that I did not want a big apartment. Actually, when I moved to Amsterdam, I now live in a very, very small apartment. I can't even do cartwheels in here. In my old apartment, I would always do cartwheels. I had a trampoline in my office. So lavish. I had a huge, I think my balcony in my old apartment was bigger than my entire bedroom in this one. And it's wonderful. Guess how much time I spend cleaning my home? Hardly any. When I look over, here are my clothes. I think I have 7 dresses. I have 2 pairs of jeans, and I have 2 t-shirts, which I use as PJs. That's it. How cool is that?
And
I live out of a suitcase. I could move tomorrow.
It's so refreshing, and like you save so much time in the morning. Like I know I'm just going to put on, plain t-shirt and jeans or shorts if it's really hot, like it is most of the time here. There's so many benefits, and there's a great documentary called, I think it's just called Minimalism. That was made by the Minimalists and a guy called Matt D'Avella. And what I love about it is they say that, your minimalism will look different to my minimalism. So like a lot of people, there's a lot of articles and things that, encourage people to fit everything in a suitcase like I could before I was going to leave. And then like you said, you could. But maybe that's like not what someone's minimalism looks like. And there's a really popular blogger, Leo Babauta. He's got like 7 children, but he is a minimalist. So it all comes back to one question, which is, does this add value? And I think that's such a great question to hold to like all areas of our life, from the people we spend time with to the food we're eating to the stuff we own, the way we spend our time. It's just like, does this add value? And if not, then like you need to do a little bit of reevaluating and maybe get rid of some things, including friends. But if this thing does add value, then why get rid of it? So like, it's not about paring down items until you can only like count them on 2 hands, but it's just about being intentional about what you bring into your life and where you spend your time and energy. And coming back to that question of like, does this add value?
What I especially love about this process is that you can't know if something adds value or if something is for you if you don't know who you are. And I feel like that's what I love most about being so intentional about my goals, about the things that I buy, about what I move towards, about just what I do in general, is that I have to be so conscious of myself. I have to be so conscious of who I am, what I want, how I want to live, what my personal values are. Because if I don't know that, I don't know what's for me, and I can't like discern between different things. And a couple of years ago, I started creating Pinterest boards with things that were for me. I wanted to find my personal style. I was in fashion school, and I was like, everybody has their style, and I don't know what my style is. And so I was like starting to pin things that I liked. Like, I like waterfalls. Okay. I like jungles. And, I now have like this entire Pinterest library of things, and I know what my thing is. I know what my style is. I can walk through the world and be like, not be distracted by anything, because I know who I am. I know what's for me. I know how I want to live. That's always evolving. But I have this like more precise sense of what that is. So do you agree, disagree? Any thoughts on that?
Totally. First of all, on the more sort of surface level of your comment, I think when you are aware of your personal style, it makes it so much easier to make those decisions. For me, like it's pretty much either a black, white, or gray t-shirt and like jeans or a pair of shorts. And it makes it so much easier to not be distracted when you go to the mall, because you're not like, oh, but I really like that thing. It's almost like you create hard rules for yourself where like, no, like I'm just not going to do that. And I don't need this thing. so I'm not even going to look at it. But then on a deeper level, I think self-awareness is huge. And even guys like Gary Vaynerchuk, who, like, he's obviously got his haters, and I don't agree with everything he says as well, and like hustle, hustle, hustle. But even he preaches the importance of self awareness and knowing what your strengths are and what your values are and what, how you best operate, basically. So I totally agree. I think so much of what we've spoken about today comes back to self-awareness, and just knowing who you are as a person.
Mm-hmm. That's really cool. I would also love to know a little bit about what your current growing edge is.
And could you just define growing edge so I'm sort of on the same page?
A growing edge for me is that thing in my life that I'm currently learning, or a challenge in my life that I'm experiencing that is trying to teach me something. Like this thing that I am having in my life and that I'm using to grow.
Mm-hmm. I'm gonna kind of mention a few things here that come to mind. As I said earlier, 80-20 is a big one for me. So I'm constantly thinking about, like, how can I focus more time on the things that are actually important. So that's one of them. Another is perfectionism. It's something I struggle with a lot, and wanting things to look really good and be perfect before putting them out there. And then the girlfriend that I mentioned earlier, she's got an 8-year-old son, and I'm 28, which has been really a completely new dynamic, but it's been really refreshing as well. And I think what he's taught me is that, just to shift from just thinking about myself and to focus on, like, other people, and also being aware of the things I say and do, and like everything I do, he's going to see. And children don't learn from what you tell them to do; they learn from what you're doing. And so that's been really good as well, because it also forces me to be aware of, like, okay, well, this is how I'm showing up. Like, this is how I want to be showing up, and then closing that gap. So those are 3 things. Let me think what else in terms of a learning edge. A big one for me is focusing on doing important work versus busy work, especially when you own your own business and like in the online space. I think especially it's so easy to get caught up in, like, things that are nice to do and things that, ticking off as many of the small items on a to-do list as possible, when actually that's just procrastinating on ticking off the 1 or 2 big items. That's something that I still struggle with. I get a hit out of, like, crossing things off a to-do list, and sometimes it's a little bit too easy to focus on those small things that don't really move the needle forward, as much as, say, the 1 or 2 big things that would. So that's something I'm constantly wrestling with. Yeah, I think that's what comes to mind right now. And there's probably a ton more, but I think that's good for now.
Awesome. I can so relate to writing to-do lists for the inner satisfaction. Yeah, that's also where minimalism has been really helpful. I have a rule of only taking 6 action steps per day. And, they can't be brushing my teeth, taking a shower. Like, they have to be, like you said, important work as opposed to busy work. Like, what's most important today? What's going to really drive my life and business forward today? And some days, like yesterday, I did my taxes for 8 hours the entire day, because there was nothing more important than that, And it was really good to have that focus and to not be distracted by smaller things that might make me feel better, but that don't actually drive my life forward. And it's not easy, because, yeah, it is not easy. But I also learned to, like, commit to things and then to grow into them. Like, do you ever do that where you're just like, okay, I have to, like, tackle this big thing because it's important work and not busy work, and you'll just commit and then do it?
Yeah, it's funny. Like, it always seems way easier once you've either gotten started or done it. And yeah, I think it all stems from like we love getting that little dopamine hit of satisfaction. It's the same as like checking social media for likes and comments. Whereas like if we're constantly checking off small items, we feel good about ourselves. But the big thing is like, oh, that's going to be such a mission. But I almost feel like you get more satisfaction when you tick off that big thing, like doing your taxes. That's a major deal. But you did, and you're like, cool, that doesn't need to be done for a few months now, and then that's done. And it comes back to something I said in the talk as well, and that was I'm going to lose it now. It's just completely evaded me. Oh man, I can't remember. I've lost it.
Never mind. What do you most love about your life right now?
So much. I get to pretty much spend my time as I want to. I've got a girlfriend who supports me 100%, which is an area I was lacking in for a long time. I feel super grateful just to know the people that I know and to be able to inspire other people and help other people. So much. Like 2016 was quite a challenging experimental year, and there will probably be there will be challenging times again. I know that. But I'm just really grateful at the moment to be able to do what I do, to have money in my bank account, to have food on the table, a roof over my head, all that good stuff.
That's awesome. I would love to ask you a couple of quick questions now that we're approaching the end of our conversation. And I would love to know, what's the best advice you've ever received?
Man. It's kind of funny because every episode I ask my guests, like, what do you wish you'd been told in your early in your 20s, which you all know. The best advice I've ever received. I think just get started. And now as I say that, I remember the thing I was going to say about the talk is like, if you have a big goal, and it was related to, like you said, doing that big thing. If you have a big goal and it feels like you're stuck or you're not making any progress, it's probably because your next step of getting there is too big. And then you just need to like break it down smaller, like make a smaller goal. If it was, for example, if it's writing a blog post or writing a book, let's make it more kind of tangible. If it's writing a book, then write one sentence. And that's not really difficult, but you'll find that like once you've written that one sentence, the others come way easier. If you trying to lose weight, like put your shoes out and your gym clothes out the night before so that when you wake up, you see them there. So it's just, I think the best advice I've probably been given is just get started and don't kind of wait for things to be perfect, but just start and learn as you go. And that ties into like, if you're feeling stuck when you're trying to just get started, then your next step is too big and you just need to make a smaller step. And there's no next step that's too small.
That's so good. Who is somebody of your past who has helped you and shaped you and helped you become the person you are today?
So someone that I've actually met in person.
That would be good, yes.
My parents have been amazing. I've had so much support from them. Even when I told them I wanted to quit my job, which was terrifying for me because my parents are both very old school. They were super supportive and they said, like, we know you're going to you'll figure it out and you'll make things work. I don't think they quite thought I'd take the path that I have taken, but they've been super supportive along the way, whether that's financially, which is something else we haven't mentioned, but like that was a big part of it at times. Living arrangements, that kind of thing, just encouraging me and not getting kind of up in my face for the times that I was kind of in a dark place, but just kind of giving me that space to grow. And then more recently, really my girlfriend. She's been amazing in terms of her support and encouragement, and even calling me out on my own BS, like when I've started making excuses, or even that talk I gave, she was in the audience. And there was a time where I was like, I don't know if I'm going to have time to prepare. And she was like, Bryan, don't be ridiculous. Like, you know, the stuff, you're passionate about it. You know, you'll be ready. Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. What's your favorite book right now?
I think my favorite book, traditionally probably The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari by Robin Sharma. I love that book, and The Alchemist. And then more recently, something else we didn't mention that I'm really sort of passionate about is Stoic philosophy. And there's a great book called The Daily Stoic, which is kind of like a little passage each day that I read normally just before bed, with a quote and like how to apply it to your life. So it amazes me how these sort of Greek philosophers said this stuff thousands of years ago, and it's still so relevant today. Even things like minimalism and perfectionism and all that kind of stuff, it's all in there. So those are the ones that are coming to me right now.
Cool. What's a dream you want to realize?
A dream I want to realize. I think being... And we didn't mention this, but again, vulnerability coming in here. My biggest fear is dying insignificant. And so I think on the flip side of that, a dream I'd love to realize is being kind of an influencer or a thought leader and inspiring other people and helping other people change their lives. Kind of not really a Tony Robbins kind of model, but something similar, I guess, and maybe a Robin Sharma kind of thing. My biggest role model or inspiration right now is Lewis Howes. And I think, yeah, just that kind of being able to make a living, inspiring other people, speaking and coaching and creating things that help other people improve their lives. I think that would be probably a really cool dream to live out.
Awesome. That's so cool. So we talked a lot about self-awareness during the episode today. We talked about how to find out who you are, what you want, and why you are even here, and all of those big life questions. And you've put together an ebook with a couple of questions that are going to help people get a little bit closer to the answers, or maybe even find them. And the ebook is called Do You Know You? And yeah, it's available for everybody who's listening to this episode. Thank you so much, Bryan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no problem. Like I said, a lot of this stuff comes back to self-awareness. And while it's not about sitting and trying to figure it out, I do find that the right questions and journaling activities do go a long way in sparking some of those ideas. And so what people will find when they check out the ebook is 5 exercises. Actually, there's 6, but I just say it's 5 and throw a little bonus one in there. So sorry to burst your bubble. Spoiler alert. But there's 6 exercises for kind of cultivating the self-awareness and asking yourself some of these deeper questions. And people can find that if they go to bryanteare.com/Hannah.
Awesome. We're also going to include that link in the show notes at hannahbeer.com/show. If you're completely lost and don't know where to find that link, no worries at all. We have you covered. You can also find information on how to connect with Bryan on his website, his social media. so no worries about that. Your Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook handle is at Bryan Teare. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. I'm pretty much at Bryan Teare everywhere. That's another thing I'm grateful for, is having a unique name.
Perfect. So you guys can find him there. And thank you so much, Bryan, for having been on the show today. It was really awesome.
Yeah, Hannah, super grateful for you and everything you're doing. Like I said when I interviewed you, and it's been a lot of fun being on the other end of the mic and being able to come on your show and sort of sharing whatever I have to share with your audience. So thank you very much. It's been amazing, and hope people got some value out of this.
Thank you so much. I'm really grateful to have had you as a guest as well. Alrighty, everybody. Don't forget to leave reviews on iTunes. Don't forget to subscribe to the show. And see you next time.